Good morning everyone, and welcome to a day in my life where I take you through a typical day working in the emergency department. So I usually wake up around 7 or 6:30 on a good day, open the blinds and then walk to the kitchen to make some tea. I decide I want a whole thermos, which I'm definitely not going to finish, and I then struggle to close it one-handed. Walk back to my room, pour some tea, sit down to do some reading. I do this for a couple of minutes, and since I have a bit of time, I decide to do some past med questions, which I miserably fail. It's now 7:40 and it's time to get to work, so I get changed and walk all the way to the hospital. At 5 to 8, I arrive to the hospital and go to the changing room to put my scrubs on. At this point, we usually have a handover, but because it's a Thursday, I have 2 hours of teaching. Today, it was a very interesting talk on domestic abuse and how to pick up signs in the emergency department. I then walk in the corridor to film this footage. It's now 10 a.m. and I start by wearing my PPE and go to see my first patient. So typically I'll take a history and examine the patient. I'll then look at a set of observations, so looking at their heart rate, blood pressure. If they need any immediate treatment, I will prescribe some medication and let the nurse know directly. I might then order some investigations and document everything that I've done. At this point, I will discuss my plan with a senior to make sure that there isn't anything they would like to add. If the patient needs to be admitted under the medical team, I will call the medical registrar and refer the patient. Hopefully that's accepted, and here I'm telling you that I'm taking a quick break while I'm waiting for the referral. I film my feet because that's what vloggers do, and I use my break to catch my prayer. Once I'm done, I'm ready to go back to see a few more patients. For the next few hours, I follow the same pattern of seeing patients, taking a history and examination, prescribing what's needed, discussing with a senior, and referring if they need admitting. A couple of hours have gone by and it's now time for a quick lunch break. I've taken it quite late, so the canteen is completely empty. I have my lunch and talk to family so I don't feel like a complete loner. I film some more walking clips just in case and head back for the handover at 4 p.m. This is when all the doctors huddle together and the day team updates everybody on their patients and what the plan is. The handover finishes at 4:30 and I have another half hour to wrap up everything I'm doing for my patients. It's now 5 p.m. and if I haven't finished everything, I will hand over to one of the doctors. As most days in ED, I managed to finish on time and make a last effort to film some more walking videos in the hospital. It's still daylight outside and I happily walk home. I finally get home, open the front door, walk up the stairs, struggle opening my door one-handed and realising that vlogging is harder than it looks. I'm not sure how to end the video, so I decide to tell you about some patients. One interesting case I saw today was of a lady who came in with abdominal pain. So typically when you pick up a patient, you'll have something called a CAS card. So there'll be a brief summary of what they've come in with, and that'll be put in a folder that you can pick up from a tray. When I went to see her, she had right upper quadrant pain that had started off gradually in the morning, felt like a sharp colicky type pain, and then gradually worsened until it was extremely severe and radiated to the back. She also had some nausea and vomiting. She was afebrile, no respiratory symptoms, and one thing that you do when you see a patient is, even if there's an obvious concern like abdominal pain for example, you still want to do a systems review and make sure that you rule out other things that could be happening. So my top differentials for this patient were acute cholecystitis, so that's when you've got a bile stone that's blocking the bile duct, and that can cause colicky type pain, and oftentimes the risk factors that they'll mention are a female, usually in her 40s, so middle-aged, usually overweight, and can have a family history as well. There are other risk factors, but it seemed to fit the bill for her. The other thing that I wanted to rule out was acute pancreatitis. Like I mentioned in my previous videos about lessons learned, you want to think of the most likely diagnosis, but then also the most life-threatening or something you definitely don't want to miss. We did a full workup doing routine bloods, as well as specific markers like amylase for pancreatitis, and white cell counts, things that you want to look for in cholecystitis. She also had an ECG and an ultrasound, and she ended up having acute pancreatitis and was admitted on the ward. So that was a really interesting case. My arm is now really tired. I didn't realise how heavy it was holding this thing, so I will tell you about the other cases later on. At this point I want to make some more tea and I'm getting tired of the vlogging, so I walk back to my room. So another really interesting case that I had was a lady who came in. She was about 76 years old. She came in via ambulance and she had had some chest pain in the morning. When I saw her, she said she felt completely fine, did not think that she should be in hospital, felt that she was wasting our time and was very keen to go home. So while it sounded like a mild episode of chest discomfort, so she didn't even call it pain,
that morning, on taking a thorough history, I found out that her husband had actually died suddenly yesterday, and she found him on the bathroom floor, and had to wait there with him for pretty much the whole day until he was actually taken away. So that was a really big shock for her. This morning she woke up and had forgotten what had happened yesterday. She turned around to look at her husband, and that's when it sort of hit her again that he was no longer there. And she had a sudden episode of left-sided chest pain that lasted about 5 minutes. She didn't have any shortness of breath, syncope, palpitations, or anything like that. So you always make sure that you take a thorough history to make sure that you rule out any other serious conditions. So you go from a mild episode of chest discomfort that could potentially be seen as reflux or something very mild, to going into the realm of MI, so myocardial infarcts. So she had a full workup. We did some serial ECGs. So whenever somebody comes in with chest pain in the emergency department, we do 3 sets of ECGs to look at a trend rather than a specific one-shot picture. Her ECG was completely normal, which was reassuring, and she was clinically fine, was very keen to go home. So we were a bit on the fence about whether we should, about the level of investigation that we should do for her. At that point, we were still waiting for her troponin to come back. So that's a cardiac marker of whether there's been any damage to the heart. So if that's raised, that tells you there's been damage to the heart and potentially a heart attack. Troponin came back significantly raised. So at that point, we referred to the medical team, and she ended up having Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. So that's a condition that's also known as broken heart syndrome. It's a temporary heart condition that's brought on by stress. So the left ventricle gets enlarged, and that means that the muscle's weaker and can't pump blood as well to the body. And that's a temporary condition, but it has a significant physical impact. So she was admitted onto the wards and treated with medications and symptomatic control. And that was a really interesting case as well, because it just goes to show the importance of getting a proper story from the history, and getting the context of the patient at home and any relevant factors in their social life that might end up being really significant in their story.
Since I'm feeling extremely productive and coincidentally filming this vlog, I decided to review some topics from patients I saw today and do a few past med questions. This doesn't last very long, and I decided to do some digital painting instead, using a fantastic Skillshare tutorial. At this point, it's around 9:30 and I'm getting really tired. I try to do a bit of reading before going to bed. Yes, I sleep very early because I'm super productive and work very hard. I lose pretense of all vlogging and decide to end the video here. I hope you found this mildly interesting. If you did, and even if you didn't, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!